Hello and welcome to my guide series. I'm Theo and in this guide I will tell you all about the Burn Mage. On the left you can see the version of the deck I've been using with a lot of success. This deck is also known as Discover, Gunther or Control Mage, but as a guideline I've gone with the name Vicious Syndicate is using. With this deck I finished both number 13 Legend in April and top 50 Legend in May, showing it's one of the best decks in this meta. So, why should you play this deck? First of all, there's no hard counter. This deck has no matchup that is heavily unfavored, making it so you don't have a lot of matches that are basically unwinnable from the start due to your opponent's deck. The deck is also very versatile, but you can often decide on how you want to play your games, and you don't have to stick to one playstyle. You can choose to be the aggressor with your early game minions, play for board or value with Medivh, or just play like Freeze Mage, try to burn your opponent with all your damage spells. And lastly, the deck is very flexible. On top of being versatile in gameplay, you can also tech your deck to help a certain playstyle. You can go from teching more early game minions, like Sorcerer's Apprentice, to help the aggressive style, to teching more value, like Elise, to go for the value game. This guide will cover the following topics. First, I will cover the deck list I've been playing. Besides showing my own deck list, I will also talk about which cards are replaceable and which tech cards you can replace them with. After that, I will discuss the most frequent matchups for the deck on the ladder. I'll go over the Mulligan for each matchup, and we'll also cover the general game plan against these decks and what you want to focus on during the game. And finally, I'll give you some general gameplay tips which you could use during your games. For this video, I don't have any gameplay examples yet. I might add this in the future to my guides, but for now, I've linked in the description a vault from my Twitch channel, during which I reached top 50 Legend with this deck. Here is the deck list I prefer to use on the ladder right now. There have been a lot of variations on this deck after the initial build by Gunther, but my list is still a bit different from most, as I found a few cards such as Babbling Book kind of underwhelming. So, how did I get to this deck list and what could you change about it? To get a good deck list, I first start with a core list, which has the cards I would basically always put in a Burn Mage deck. This list has 23 cards, meaning you have a lot of slots to tech the deck the way you like and what's best in the current meta. For the last 7 slots, you can consider using the following cards. Babbling Book is good if you want to be a bit more aggressive or fill out your curve. However, the value of a random card can be great to unusable. Mage Valdos helps you cycle and can be comboed with your damage spells. Sorcerer's Apprentice, good if you want to be proactive with this deck, works well together with Babbling Book. Counterspell or Ice Barrier, you usually want to include a third secret, so you almost always draw one secret with Arcanologist. Ice Barrier is better versus aggro decks, but pretty poor in slow matchups. Counterspell is good in most matchups, and can deny critical cards from your opponent and disrupt their game plan. Gluttonous Ooze is great versus Pirate Warrior and in the mirror, and decent versus other warriors and paladins. Cabal Courier is a very versatile card that can get you a lot of value and surprise your opponent. Volcanic Potion is great mainly versus board focused decks, but can be a dead card if you need to be the aggressor. Eater of Secrets is great when you face a lot of mages, but terrible against almost everything else. Polymorph is a great card versus Death Rattles, and it's just guaranteed removal when you need it. Elise the Trailblazer, a card you want for very long matchups, although with limited card draw, it can take a while until you draw the pack. Meteor, great spot removal, and often clears several minions on top of hitting a big target. Flame Strike, strong AoE versus board-centric decks, but turn 7 can sometimes be too late. Matchups in Mulligan. For the Mulligan, you usually want to keep 2 things in mind. First, you want to assume that your opponent is playing the most aggressive, or the most common deck of his class. And second, if you already have a good opening, you can keep cards that you otherwise wouldn't keep, but can help you curve out after your opener. For example, you keep Primordial Glyph if you already have a Mana Worm, because of their synergy. But if you don't have a Mana Worm, you don't want to keep Glyph, because you're looking for your early game minions. Against Mage, you want to get Mana Worm, Arcanologist, Frostbolt, and Medivh Chalet. The Mirror is a rather difficult matchup, as there are a lot of ways to win. Often the way to win is to slowly gain the board to get some chip damage in, so you can be the first to proc the Ice Block. It also forces them to go for the burn plan, and you can then Alexstrasza yourself out of range after they proc your Ice Block. Also Medivh can win this matchup if it doesn't get oozed, as the amount of value from Atiesh can be hard to deal with. Make sure to evaluate during the game which plan is best based on the situation. Secret Mage is very reliant on the early tempo turns, with cards like Kirin Mage. Focus on removing their board while not getting blown out by either counterspell or mirror entity. You can do this by saving weak minions, the coin and cheap spells. Alexstrasza on an empty board generally wins the game by turn 9 as they're most likely out of resources. However, be careful as some lists run Burgly Bully plus Intonitis, so if you see a bully, you have to try to go for the win yourself instead of relying on your opponent to run out of resources. Against Druid, you're looking for Mana Worm, Archaeologist, Frostbolt, Melis Valet and Volcanic Potion. Echo Druid is a matchup where it's very important to keep the board as small as possible to prevent their buffs from getting too much value. You want to find AoE or single target removal from your glyphs so you can keep answering every threat while saving Volcanic Potion for living mana. Killing beasts is your priority, while pirates are low priority, due to them possibly having to eat them with their own crawler. Against Jade Druid, you have to be the aggressor. You want to pressure them early or removing their minions to protect yours. You often need to deal quite a bit of damage from the board to win this matchup, so don't switch too early to a burn plan. After early game, you either win this matchup by getting a strong board they can't deal with, usually with Medivh, or drawing all your burn before they draw all their armor cards. Against Warrior, you keep Mana Worm, Archaeologist, Frostbolt, Melis Valet and Gluttonous Ooze. The Pirate Warrior matchup is often very dependent on how many answers you draw to their threats and how many weapons they draw. Focus on clearing their pirates to play around Bloodstone Cultist and try to maximize your health gain during the game. Alexstrasza often wins this matchup, so try to work towards her. If you are sure your block gets procced, try to go on the offense, as a surprising amount of times you can kill the Pirate Warrior in 2 turns, especially when you have an additional ice block in hand. Taunt Warrior is the opposite of Pirate, in that you can easily take the board early. However, you don't want to overextend in the brawl, so try to have just enough pressure that you don't mind the brawl, but they don't get too much value out of it. They don't run a lot of armor gain, so once you put them low with your minions, you usually want all your damage spells to go face. Against Paladin, you want to Mulligan for Mana Worm, Archaeologist, Frostbolt and Medivh Valet. Against the aggressive Murloc variant of Paladin, it's important to try to get control of the board, as the Murloc Paladin can easily snowball even a small board of Murlocs. Using all your burn on Murlocs is fine, as your late game should be stronger. It is usually better to play defensively, because even if you set up lethal, they can just win by putting you to 1 and playing eye for an eye. If you are no threat of being put to 1, being the aggressor can be good, as the only real healing is from True Silver. Midrange Paladin is very similar to the aggro variant. You want to have board to take control of the game. The only thing is that being the aggressor can be punished here, as they run Ragnaros the Light Lord, but they do have less early game, so you get more time to find answers. Since they have quite a bit of late game, on top of the early game Murlocs, you have to find a balance between not letting them snowball a board early and playing for value, as they can definitely beat you on the front with the right discovers. Control Paladin can be a complex matchup. Depending on their list, they can have a lot of healing in late game. The game plan really depends on your draws, as sometimes you don't find a lot of value and you have to go for the burn plan, or you find only answers and you have to go for the value plan. If they don't play hands off, you can sometimes compete with them until fatigue and win on value there. Make sure you save your removals for the best target, like Meteor for Ragnaros and Polymorph for Tyrion. Also, it's often best to go for greedy cards from Glyph if you don't find a Fireball or Pyroblast to help your burn plan. Against Rogue, you want to keep Mana Worm, Archaeologist and Medivh Valet. Quest Rogue is a matchup where you want to be very aggressive, to deal enough damage before they can complete the quest, so you only need a few spells to kill them. Try to get as much board as possible early, and don't care about value here. Unless they are very low on cards, trying to gain board after they completed the quest is kind of an impossible task due to their 5/5 chargers. Because of this, try not to spend your burn spells on board, unless you gain more damage in the end by doing so, as you need all the bursts you can get after they complete their quest. Also, if you have some mana left during the mid game, don't mind using it on a damage spell to their face. Miracle Rogue is quite a good matchup, due to them not having a strong early game and lacking any defensive tools. Also, this Burn Mage deck can remove everything the rogue puts down until either fatigue or until you draw enough burn. Sometimes you need to try to set up a 3 or even 4 turn lethal, because rogues can't stop it and generally take a turn or 2 to develop a big board. Only thing to be afraid of are the random spells from Swashbuckler and Hallucination, so if you have the possibility to play around them, always do it, because for example Counterspell and a Power Blast can be pretty devastating. When facing Shamans, you keep Mana Worm, Archaeologist, Frostbolt, Belief's Valet and Volcanic Potion. Though Good Shaman is the most common deck for Shaman right now, it's the deck that plays Bloodlust, Evolve and Doppelgangster. This means you want to keep the board as small as possible. You can either win this matchup by outvaluing them and removing everything, or by burning them, as this deck has no defensive tools besides taunts. Against Priests, you mulligan for Mana Worm, Archaeologist, Deep's Valet and Frostbolt. Silence Priest only has a few threats, and it shouldn't be difficult to remove those with Double Meteor, Polymorph and all the other removal in this deck. Don't let them draw if you can, and just try to outlast them, as they will never be able to win the value game. Also, they have no heals, so you can often just kill them without the threat of additional healing. The Dragon Priest matchup can be rather tricky, due to the Draconid operatives stealing Burn, Ice Block or Alexstrasza. Also, some lists run Priest of the Feast, making the burn plan a lot harder. Try to get some early pressure with your minions, remove their mid-game minions with removal like Meteor, and switch to the burn plan once you lose the board. Against Hunter, you are looking for Mana Worm, Archaeologist, Frostbolt, Belief's Valet and Volcanic Potion. Mid-range Hunters will try to snowball their early turns, put you low late game, so the hero power alone can finish you off. Focus on getting board control, and whenever you can, try to remove all the beasts. Be careful of scavenging Hyena if they have a lot of beasts on the board, and you don't have any removal, as the Hyena can win games by itself. If you have Alexstrasza, try to plan your way to a very good Alexstrasza turn, after which the Hunter is unlikely to deal the remaining 15 damage. I haven't faced any Warlocks, so it's hard to say what you need. Best is probably to mulligan for Zoo, and go for the usual early game cards. Board controls everything against Zoo, so focus on that. If it's a Handlock variant, you can be really aggressive, as the deck doesn't run a lot of healing, so any damage you do will stick, and you only have to be afraid of a big Jiraxxus heal. Final tips. When to use Primordial Glyph. You usually want to use Glyph when you either have 2 mana left, and know what you want, or when you need to find an answer. Also, you can try to find a secret turn 2, so you can play the secret turn 3 together with Deep's Valet. In slower matchups, you can sometimes wait with using it until you know which spells you need from it. Also, if you choose Glyph from Glyph, it is often smart to wait if you don't need the spell immediately, because you can then use it for free in a future turn once you know what you want. When to be aggressive and defensive. As I've already mentioned several times, with this deck it is very important to know when to be the aggressor and when to play defensively. In aggro matchups, you obviously want to play the defender, but in other matchups this can be difficult to decide. Your strategy can even change mid-game, depending on the game state in your hand. Generally, you want to play defensively if you know that you can outvalue your opponent and run them out of cards. You want to go for the offensive burn plan, when your opponent doesn't have a lot of tools to stop the aggression, or you know that your opponent will eventually beat you on board. When to play Counterspell. Counterspell can be game deciding, so knowing when the time is right to play it is really important. First, it's usually better to play it if you don't have Ice Block up, so your opponent will assume it's Ice Block, or you want to play it when your opponent can't attack your face to check for Ice Barrier. Second, it can be really good when your opponent wants to play a powerful spell in the next turn, like Spike-Rich Steed or Living Mana. Third, it can protect your board against something like a Brawl, because often a Taunt Warrior doesn't have the resource to check for Counterspell, even if they expect it. And lastly, it can always just deny a card from your opponent. Even a low-cost spell can be fine, as this gives your opponent just less options. And that's the end of this guide. Thank you for watching my take on the Burn Mage. I hope you learned from this, and let me know in the comments if you have any questions remaining. If you enjoyed this guide, I'll soon post more of these guides, and you can go to my Twitch channel, where I stream daily. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you at my next guide.